Coming to you from the home of Franklin's finest, this is the APB Podcast. Here now is Franklin Police Public Information Manager, Max Winitz.
Welcome in, everybody. It is episode 17 of the APB Podcast. Great, as always, to have you with us, and thanks for making us a part of your week. The month of September is National Suicide Prevention Month, and that's what we are focusing the show on today. For the third time in this podcast's brief history, we are welcoming Chief Deb Faulkner, the Chief of Police here in the city of Franklin. And we are going to be talking to her about how this issue, the issue of suicide, is impacting those in the city of Franklin, how this issue is impacting those in the law enforcement community, and how you can seek help if you need it. This is a topic that Chief Faulkner cares a great deal about, so you're not going to want to miss that conversation. That's coming up in just a couple of minutes. But first, let's get to the news headlines. The Franklin Police Department will host its annual 9/11 Remembrance Ceremony on Thursday, September 11th. It's scheduled for 8 a.m. right here at the Franklin Police Department headquarters. That's 900 Columbia Avenue. The Franklin Fire Department will partner in the program, which provides the community with an opportunity to come together in solemn reflection. If you're watching on our YouTube channel right now, this is video from last year's ceremony. This year's public ceremony is always open to all, and community members are encouraged to attend and join both the Franklin Police and Fire Departments in remembering the lives lost and the heroes who answered the call. And the Franklin Police Department is proud to announce that Officer Vin Guyen has been promoted to Master Patrol Officer. Guyen joined FPD in October 2023 after serving several years with the New Orleans Police Department. Since then, he has brought his dedication, his professionalism, and experience to the Franklin community. As a Master Patrol Officer, he will take on the important responsibility of mentoring and guiding the department's newest hires, helping shape the next generation of Franklin police officers. Congratulations to him. When we come back, we will be discussing National Suicide Prevention Month with Chief Deb Faulkner. That's coming up after the break.
Are you ready to make a difference in your community? The Franklin Police Department is seeking dedicated, passionate individuals who want to protect and serve in the South's most charming town. As a member of our internationally accredited team, you'll be part of a dynamic, supportive department that values integrity, professionalism, and community engagement. Enjoy competitive benefits, career advancement opportunities, and the chance to truly impact the safety and well-being of our neighbors. For more information, visit franklintn.gov/joinfpd. That's franklintn.gov/joinfpd.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm Max Winitz. We are being joined for the third time on the podcast by Chief Deb Faulkner. Always a pleasure. Thanks for sitting down.
My pleasure.
We are going to discuss Suicide Prevention Month in just a couple of minutes. But first, Chief, what's new and exciting? What's going on here at the department that you want the public to know about?
Well, we continue to be very delighted with a group of men and one woman who is in our current trainee class to be new police officers. They're in week 5, I believe, and they're working very hard. I'm very proud of them. And more importantly, they have really embraced Franklin as their new home, and they fit right into the department. I think they're going to be a real asset to the city of Franklin.
Yeah, they went through a pepper spray training this week. Not fun, but
that's not fun.
But important.
It is important. They need to know as much as they can about every tool that these officers carry with them, and particularly the less lethal or non-lethal weapons that they also carry. That's important for them to be certified with everything. We also have an event coming up this next week, which is our remembrance of the 9/11, September 11th. It's Patriot Day, and it's also a day that we stop whatever we're doing and remember the almost 3,000 first responders and citizens that died that day. It was very tragic. I remember it well. We invite anybody who wants to come and join us that morning to remember. I think most people are just kind of looking for a place to stop and think and to remember those sacrifices that day. And I review the in-line of duty numbers pretty regularly on a website, and we still see in-line of duty deaths as a result of 9/11, where firefighters and police officers have died from either getting cancer or whatever from everything that they dealt with that day. The fumes, the toxic environment that they worked in for weeks, trying to at first save and then finally recover the people who were in that horrible Twin Towers tragedy. So it's an important day to remember. We will be in front of police headquarters, weather depending on that, at 8 o'clock, and we welcome everybody to just walk up and join us. And remember, we'll have our honor guard. The firefighters will have their large flag out front. Our piper will be here, and we'll just pause to remember that important day.
What does that day mean to you as somebody in law enforcement, a day where so many of your brothers and sisters who wore the badge unfortunately perished?
Well, law enforcement changed forever that day. We changed the way we did a lot of things. I was a member of the Metro Nashville Police Department at that time, and our training changed, things we had to watch for, the types of calls for service that officers were responding to. Everybody was frightened. And so a big part of our job was just trying to settle people down and restore their faith. And I had a lot of officers at Metro who were deployed, who were in the Guard, that suddenly ended up being called to service in that regard. But our hearts went out to the people of New York City and also everything that happened in Washington and also in Pennsylvania where the plane went down. So those images are forever sort of burned into my brain. I'll never forget, we were all glued to our televisions watching what was going on, but also being mindful of what was going on in our own hometowns.
Yeah.
We just didn't know what we didn't know.
Yeah. You mentioned those who you served with at Metro who went overseas. We have a couple of veterans here who fought in the wars post 9/11, Leanne Hester being
Yes.
one of them.
Yeah, we have 39 veterans, military veterans now, and we certainly are honored that they chose our department to be a member of as well, and we honor their service both to our country and to our city.
All right, let's move on to Suicide Prevention Month. Why is this an important month, would you say, for law enforcement?
Well, it is to bring awareness to the fact that there is a tremendous mental health issue in the United States, and Franklin is certainly a part of that as well. I can remember a time when we didn't talk about it. You never talked about somebody having a mental breakdown or who needed help, but law enforcement was dealing with it because we would be the ones that usually got the call. In fact, I saw something very interesting recently, a study conducted by the National Conference of State Legislatures stated, a person experiencing a mental health crisis is more likely to encounter law enforcement than to receive treatment or crisis intervention. So we're going to be the ones many times who get those calls. Certainly we're out there 24/7, holidays, doesn't matter. And often tell people if you dial your doctor's office, your dentist office, any healthcare provider, a lot of times you'll get a recording saying, if this is truly an emergency, dial 911. Well, who do you think you're going to get when you dial 911? So, officers are going to be those first responders. So, what does that look like for Franklin? We're just 42 square miles. But a psychological emergency is one of our leading calls for service. I'm sorry to say that. Last year, Franklin officers responded to 130 calls related to suicide. The oldest person was 80 and the youngest was 7. 28 of these calls were juveniles, and there were also 55 overdoses. Now, so far this year, the oldest person has been 90 years old, and unfortunately, that was a suicide. And the youngest has been 12. in the first 8 months of this year. I don't know about you, but this time of the year, when I was 7 and 12, I was excited about being back in school and going to football games and seeing my friends and planning slumber parties and doing all of those fun things. So it hurts my heart to think that there's so many children. I mean, about a third of these calls are juveniles.
Yeah.
I think a number that I often discuss that demonstrates a real concern regarding mental health is the number of calls that we get that are coded welfare check. And last year, our officers responded to over 5,600 welfare checks. And some examples of these calls would be, I see someone walking down Carruthers. They're in the middle of the road barefoot, and it's cold. I have a neighbor who hasn't picked up their mail in days. A doctor's office will call and say, we have a patient who has missed their appointment and they're not answering the phone, and that's unlike them. Or they've missed work, and that's unlike them, and they can't get them on the phone. And sometimes, unfortunately, these are people who don't have anybody else to check on them but the police.
Yeah.
So, thank God we're here.
Right.
In a lot of these cases, the person doesn't know their neighbors. They haven't affiliated with a church. Their relatives live out of town. In fact, most of these calls are long distance. I can't get my dad on the phone. I've texted him, I've called him. Could somebody go by and check? So the police do go, and unfortunately they find people who are in need of medical attention, or perhaps we find them deceased. We continuously do training in different first aids, such as CPR. All of our officers carry Narcan in case it's an overdose. And we do intense training on crisis intervention and de-escalation. We needed that recently. Last week we had someone on the Natchez Trace Bridge, and officers spent almost an entire day. It wasn't our call because that's in the county, but we were called in, our hostage negotiators, our people who are specially trained in de-escalation and trying to build a rapport with someone who's in distress. They eventually talked this person into coming back down, and they were taken for medical treatment. Thank God, we were all praying for that person. All of our officers carry breaching tools in case they have to break into a house to save someone, and that's come into unfortunately that's come in handy several times where they spotted someone in the garage that was about to take their life. We know that what we say and do in those first moments is critical to getting someone to the attention, the medical attention that they desperately need. So knowing how to use those tactics and just basically human empathy is so critical to this job nowadays. We try to give officers the skills to identify what's going on with somebody. And they also have to do a risk assessment for their own safety and the safety of other people in the area. Our officers are very resilient. They've worked through a pandemic and a lot of other things, and they don't complain. But I often say that as chief of police, it's my job to take care of the people who take care of us. So we have someone who's on site who is a licensed psychologist who can do one-on-one sessions with our officers. We do critical incident debriefings after a major event that officers have responded to. We try to provide a safe place for them to sort of talk it out. I can remember a time when it was just walk it off, suck it up, buttercup, get over yourself, move on to the next. Mm-hmm. But we know for our own wellness and mental health, we have to be able to let it go and move on and know that what we're feeling and experiencing is human and okay. We are going to be adding a victim support coordinator to our staff. We'll have that announcement out when it's appropriate, probably in October or later this year. But we are clearly a victim-centered law enforcement agency. And so the ability to reach out not just to crime victims and their families, but also when we have to deliver a deaf message. Well, we had one this week. Being able to link people to other agencies that they might need to help them through, distress, and just kind of the other part of dealing with grief, and things that you have to do when the worst happens. But again, I have to sort of check my own officers. Like I said, I have 39 who are military veterans, so we check for PTSD. And an interesting thing, I think, nationwide, again, I constantly look at statistics. So far this year, more officers have died from suicide than from in-line of duty death. There's been 71 suicides so far this year and 60 in-line of duty deaths. That's not okay. So I've got to take care of my officers. It's a tough time for people. Everybody is dealing with different things. I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but let's face it, it's reality. Everybody's got stuff they're trying to handle. And there's a lot of resources in our city. There, of course, is the 988 number. It's 24/7. We have the Refuge Center, which is a wonderful place. Amy Alexander is a fabulous friend to our city and all of her staff. The Mercy Community Health Center, a mobile crisis. And I also want to mention that our mayor, Dr. Ken Moore, he assembled a group several years ago, of which I'm honored to be a part of, and it's called Find Hope Franklin. And if people go to that website, there's a tremendous directory of community agencies and assets that can help anyone that you know out there, the public, that you think might be needing a little help, someone to talk to, an outlet for the stress that they're experiencing. And so I really encourage people to look at Find Hope Franklin if they're searching for an agency that can help, either a neighbor, a friend, somebody at church. And we've worked with our faith community, and they're very much on board with this, and certainly will be a conduit in confidence to help people link with someone who can take them and make them well.
Yeah. Let me stop you. This is something that's very near and dear to you. Anybody who knows you knows you care a great deal about suicide prevention. During speeches that I've seen you give, and you've several times have shown it to me in your office, and I'm blanking on the date, but you have a framed map from decades ago, and I believe it was one of the former Franklin police chiefs who did it, but it had all the suicides that they responded to back in the day. You mentioned some of the numbers now. What did the numbers look like back then versus what we're seeing now?
Well, it's interesting. It was Sheriff Fleming. And a lot of people who are longtime Franklinites remember Sheriff Fleming. He was quite a legend. And it's interesting because I mentioned, statistics. I keep up with everything. I try to.
Yeah.
And so, we have technology now to do that, to do our crime data and things of this sort. But he had a big old map of the county, and that's how he kept up with all of his statistics. And I'm a visual person, so I can relate to what he was doing. He kept up with several things. He kept up with where there were moonshine stills, where there were good time houses, things we don't. This was like 1973. Mm-hmm. So, those were things you had to watch for in Franklin and Williamson County. And he kept up with where all the nightclubs were. He kept up with where there were homicides. And what was amazing to me was that he kept up with the suicides. And I was stunned, and I don't have that exact number, memorized,
sure.
But it was easily in the 60s. And I was stunned by that. First of all, that he was keeping up with the same things that I'm keeping up with. Yeah. And yet the number was so high. It was amazing to me. But so things haven't changed a whole lot. People are still dealing with some serious issues. But the most important thing is that we can talk about it. I mean, we're talking about it now, where we didn't used to, probably even 1973. And that there are more helping agencies that you can reach out to and not have to resort to the worst case scenario.
Are there any personal experiences that have shaped your own perspective as far as suicide awareness?
Yeah. I had friends at Metro Nashville PD that committed suicide, and we didn't see it coming. Well, I mean, they were healthy, happy, we thought, and we missed the cues that were there. I look back on it now, and of course I went back and did my doctoral work at Vanderbilt on human development counseling, and we talked about mental health. And so now I'm much more aware, I guess as much as you can be, about those serious indicators that people were kind of broadcasting, and we just didn't think that it would happen.
What are some of the warning signs?
Well, certainly, I mean, I had one that was starting, he was starting to give things away, things that were very personal to him. He bought a beautiful Swiss grandfather clock when he was in the military, and he gave it to somebody. And I knew how much he treasured it. He went and bought a brand new Corvette. In fact, that's how I took his life. I know because I pulled him over for speeding. I didn't know it was him, and he went flying past me, and I pulled him over, and he thought that was really funny, and I didn't, because, I thought it was dangerous. And then a couple of days later, he pulled into his garage and died of carbon monoxide poisoning. So, there are a lot of flags, people who do things out of the ordinary. They're making plans that are unusual. They're isolating themselves from friends. And it seems like when they make up their mind, there's a feeling of euphoria because they've made up their mind to do it. And then they start taking actions to do it. I answered a number of these calls when I was a patrol officer in Nashville, and dealing with that trauma, and then dealing with a family, that's difficult. So we want to do a better job at that on the front end. We also want to be able to help the families, which is why we want to add this coordinator. But also in dealing with the after effects, I had a friend of mine who's a police officer in Knoxville, and he said, in this job, it's like walking down the street, and when you answer a call, it's kind of like you pick up a big rock and put it in your backpack, and eventually the backpack gets too heavy to carry. And so that's what I'm paying attention to with my officers.
Yeah, and I'm glad you talked about our officers, not just the general public, because that's very important. I think you said, 71 nationwide have died by suicide this year? What more, if anything, can be done to help officers in your mind?
Well,
that maybe we're not doing already. I mean, the fact that we have a licensed psychologist here is tremendous.
And the city also has a really good EAP program, but another thing that we have here at the department are peer supporters. We have 27 officers who are especially trained to be peer supporters, and they can deal with things that they notice. I mean, they get really close working in patrol together. They answer calls together. Sometimes they socialize together. Maybe they go hunting or fishing or go running together, things like that. And if they spot anything different in the officer's performance, and that's the good thing about our supervisors, is that they will notice that maybe this officer's doing things that he never did before. Calling out sick, showing up late. We're getting citizen complaints on them, on their attitude, the way they deal with people, maybe comments that they make. And so these peer supporters might pick up on that and have those one-on-one conversations. The officers who are peer supporters wear a pin that indicates that they are peer supporters. And we give our officers a coin. It's something that I do. And it has our badge on one side, and on the back it says, "In this family, no one fights alone." And that's true. We have to have each other's back. in more ways than one. So I think the peer supporter program is very important also.
If somebody is watching this, listening to this, and they are experiencing that feeling of hopelessness, what would you say to them?
I'd say it's okay not to be okay. You know, a lot of people say that, but it's true. The difference is ask for help. And if it means 911, we're there 24/7, 7 days a week, holidays, it doesn't matter. If you want to talk to an officer, we're trained to try to get you to who we think will help you. And we just hope that they'll ask for help. And again, don't hesitate. It's important. Our officers care very much. They take an oath to serve and protect. And it's disappointing when we think that we're too late. Again, this is a hard subject to talk about. I get it. And a lot of people won't want to listen to this. But if anybody hears it and it makes a difference, then I've done my job. And that's what's important to me. And also taking care of my officers.
And one more time, Chief, you mentioned some of the local resources earlier. If you could just go ahead and repeat, you mentioned Find Hope Franklin, which is a great local initiative. There's the National Suicide Hotline. Just one more time, if you could tell us some of the very useful resources out there for folks.
Yes, well, certainly the Refuge Center and Mercy Health. But there are several that are not just faith-based, but are counselors. And again, they're on Find Hope Franklin on the internet. It's a wonderful website that Mayor Moore has put together. And we work closely with the counselors at the schools because they're one-on-one with your children day in and day out. Again, a third of our calls have to do with juveniles. So we work closely with them on identifying some of these services. Again, the churches and synagogues and so our faith-based organizations, and there's just a lot of helping people. United Way organizations, our hospital here in Franklin at Williamson Medical, they have an area where they can help you as well. In fact, that's where we take people for evaluation and to try to get them segue into help. And certainly we have Rolling Hills here in Franklin. There's a lot. I'm going to be leaving someone out, and I don't mean to. And again, 911 or 988, those are simple numbers to remember.
Okay. Is there anything else at all you'd like to add that I didn't ask you about?
No, just I think I've said plenty, but we do care very much. I hope people hear that. We get in this business because we want to make a difference and we want to help people. You know, I interview young men and women all the time who want to be police officers, and I ask them, why do you want to be a police officer? And 9 times out of 10, they'll say, because I want to help people. And never has that been more important than it is right now.
All right. Chief Deb Faulkner, thank you so very much. Appreciate your time and everything you said to get out this very important message. So thanks again.
Thank you.
And that will do it for this edition of the APB podcast. We will see you next time, everybody, and stay safe.